After much ado about nothing, we're finally here.
Yeah.
Yes, because the listeners experienced that
Behind the
20
scenes.
minutes of
Oh, yeah.
setting up.
They sure did.
When graphics cards die, you make do.
Yes. I have had the grave misfortune of having my graphics card blow out in the middle of a global chip shortage. And so, yeah. It's very hard to get a decent graphics card these days, number one, because of the global chip shortage, and number two, because everyone and their mother is starting to buy every graphics card in existence to mine crypto with.
Lovely.
Speaking of which, I do need to talk to you about PC building stuffs a little bit later.
Yes.
Prior to Black Friday, Cyber Monday anyway, because I want to take advantage of that to build a PC.
A personalized computer.
For the most part, these days, the online retailers are giving out their deals before Black Friday.
Okay.
So generally speaking, they'll have everything, their best deals, now.
Sure.
So
what you're saying is I should start looking for an SSD now.
This would be the time. And they have Black Friday price protection on most of their things.
Oh, so if it goes down, it'll be like, hey, we're going to charge you what the lowest deal was?
Yeah. You'll get a credit for the difference.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. Struggling to wrap my brain around the fact that Thanksgiving is a week away from tomorrow already.
Mm-hmm.
As of the time of recording this, it's probably in shorter time. If
once this comes out, it will be but a few days until Thanksgiving. So
that is right.
Mm-hmm. That'll make recording awkward. Are we going to record over Thanksgiving weekend?
Depends how busy.
Because I might be here Friday, just because I work on Friday morning and probably Saturday.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna come back here and then go home the weekend after, because that's
we'll have
when
to work
we're
that out, I
celebrating
guess.
3 birthdays.
Yeah, we'll have to work that out, I guess.
We might not. We might just call it a holiday week.
Yeah, we might. Stay tuned for that. I guess. What does Thanksgiving look like at the seminary?
Thanksgiving looks like we're not here.
Oh, you are heading out?
Yes, we get the whole week off, so that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
I will be spending it in Wisconsin with my relatives.
Okay.
And going up to IHM for a day, because those college suckers don't get off the entire week. So I'll go up and spend Sunday night with my college brothers and Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that'll be good.
And then when do things wrap up for Christmas break? John was just asking this earlier, and I was like, I don't know.
Well, officially, we're done on the 9th. That's our last day of classes of December.
Ah.
But, or 10th, whatever that Friday is. But I have lots of back and forths to do, so I may end up just coming home a week early and driving home, rather than fly to Minnesota, fly back, go to school for 3 days, then drive back home.
Yeah, it seems slightly inconvenient.
Yeah.
Given the substantial distance involved.
And also the fact that I have no exams that I even need to be back for. It's all just papers that are due last day of school for the semester. So,
do they have you guys serving Bishop's installation mass, or?
Yes, they do.
Cool.
That's why I'm coming back up on the weekend of that's happening.
Yeah, December
the 3rd.
6th. You'll have
the 3rd
to,
through the 6th, I will be back home.
You'll have to try to see, what is it, J.D. Flynn's going to be there, or?
Yes, he will. So he has said.
I think I've been sort of vaguely, since my work Twitter account follows a bunch of different Catholic things, the feed has just been inundated with USCCB stuff going on. So I saw he'd presented on something, but
Probably a stage or a podium.
yes, theoretically. But yeah, it's stuff be happening. Eucharistic documents and a lot of elections. I've never paid this much attention to a bishop's conference before, but stuff be happening. Trying to wrap up things at work for different projects that need to be done prior to the holidays. And the one project, it's amazing when you're working on a magazine how if you need to add a page, an extra page that you weren't originally planning on, there's just this whole domino effect on the rest of the document. So the way it works is with the printer is that the page count needs to be divisible by 4. So you cannot simply add one more page. You have to add 4 more pages. So here I was.
Does not simply add one more page.
Because they need to lay a whole sheet in there, and that's 2 sides of 2 pages on opposite sides. That makes sense.
Correct. Yeah. It's here I was happily sitting there with my nearly completed proof with the perfect number of pages, just waiting on one piece of content to be submitted. And of course that piece of content was too long. So scramble to make things fit, but I think it's going to work out. It's coming together. So hopefully finally get that thing done by the end of the week. And then tomorrow's going to be a sort of a long day. I've got there's this thing called the president's reception with the president of the school system giving a presentation. I'll be recording that video for that.
Are you sure it isn't called the presentation?
Yeah. That would just be confusing.
It would be.
It's interesting how I think it was around last year when we did this thing. We pre-recorded his presentation to send it to people who couldn't come due to COVID.
Sure.
And I titled the video on YouTube "President's Reception," and then there's all this election information that automatically displayed in the description. I was like, oh yeah, I suppose.
Not that president.
I didn't specify president of what, but the YouTube police bots are out doing their work. I see, plying their trade. The lamplighters were plying their trade. Too early.
Yeah.
Too early.
We've got another week of ordinary time.
Mm-hmm.
Simmer down.
And then the Feast of Christ the King. What a glorious... I've always liked
But as
that.
of the time of recording, the Feast of Christ the King will have already happened.
Yeah.
As
Well,
the time of release, that
upload-
is.
Up.
Release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. There's not a ton else new going on this part of the world. It's colder. It snowed finally. That's really about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's currently 65 right now down
Nice.
here.
Oh.
It's honestly a little disappointing to be past the Ides of November and have it not be sub 30.
Which day? I know at some point this week there was supposed to be a near total lunar eclipse, but it's at like 4 a.m, and I don't feel like getting up for that. It's like it's like one every 600 years. I'm like, ooh, astronomical event. Crap. Why do astronomical events have to happen when I want to sleep?
That's
Although-
the question I ask myself all the time, except for why do events have to happen when I want to sleep?
Yeah, like at all. There was, of course, what was it, 2017? There was the big solar eclipse. That was pretty cool. It was a little weird too. Just how dark it got in the middle of the afternoon. But astronomical. There was also a bunch of aurora borealis going on the last few weeks up north.
Aurora Borealis.
Mm-hmm.
This time of
This
year,
time of year.
in this part of the
This
country.
time of day.
localized entirely within your North Dakota. But I saw some photos of that. It looked pretty cool. It was mostly green. I think our buddy Andrew Haberman was visiting over the weekend. He said that he lives up in Botno, North Dakota, which is pretty far north to the north, and he said they were pretty clear up where he was at. So that's pretty neat.
Indeed.
Yeah. We're running out of things to say. We're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
And I am Riley.
This would be an edition of Gregarious Games.
Baby.
Speaking of running out of things to say, our main character in this one doesn't have
Say
much
anything.
to say.
He's a silent protagonist. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the shooter granddaddy of them all. Pretty much modern shooter granddaddy.
It's one of the. I wouldn't.
On the other side of the family from Dune. Like, you have your one grandfather, and then there's the other grandfather. Or not Dune.
Dune's different.
Doom.
No, we're not talking about Doom either, though.
No, we are talking about Half-Life.
Now, if you want to talk about physics-based puzzles, physics engines, that's what it's a granddaddy of.
Yeah. Yep. First-person physics-based 3D games, yeah. So yes, Half-Life. The first game came out in 1998, so it's nearly as old as we are. So you begin the game
on a train.
On a train. You're illustrious Dr. Gordon Freeman, making your way into the Black Mesa facility in New Mexico, where you study all sorts of interesting phenomena.
Physics
stuff. You're a physicist. So there's this wacky artifact thing that they found, and they're like, let's throw a bunch of particles at it and see what happens. So you dress up in your super duper suit,
your hazmat
suit,
shooter mechanic explained away suit.
Dr. Freeman.
He doesn't show up yet.
No.
He shows up in the background.
No. Oh, no, I wasn't doing that. Anyway, I was trying to do the robot voice. But
right.
Anyhow, so you walk into work and everybody's like, hey, you're late, get in there. It's time to do the experiment. So the experiment involves you taking this crystal and shoving it into a laser to see what happens. And lo and behold, you shoving a crystal into a laser in this instance isn't just a dance party. It opens a portal to an alien world called Zen. And all these wild creatures start pouring out of the portal and completely contaminating and filling the facility. Things have gone quite wrong. So there's your fellow scientists are scrambling about the place, and security guards are trying to contain the chaos, and people are getting killed by strange creatures left and right, and you're just like running around trying to stay alive. So, as you progress through the game, you gradually pick up weapons and start shooting the creatures. You got
whacking things with crowbars,
yep,
shooting them with shotguns,
that type of stuff. And you discover there's a group of scientists who are still alive who are like, okay, if we make our way to this one part of the facility, we can call for help. So they call for help, and the government comes and sends in troops to save the day.
And by save the day, we mean shoot everybody and everything.
Because the government's like, how about we clean up the mess by pretending the mess never existed? And if you say otherwise, or have potential to say otherwise, how about you die?
But
now
not going to say otherwise.
No, because obviously a physicist is an expert at the use of weapons. So not only can he kill scores of aliens, he can also kill scores of government soldiers.
I have a PhD in kicking.
Precisely. So not only are you fighting alien creatures, you are also fighting government troops trying to silence you. You make your way through the facility, and there's a group of survivors who are like, managed to cobble together some equipment. They're like, you know what? We might be able to put a stop to this thing if we can send somebody to this place that's sort of a in-between dimension. This place is called Zen. If we can send them there and try to shut the portal, because there's something in there that's holding it open, this being. So you fight your way through the facility, jump through some portals, fight a bunch of giant crabs, and then there's a 3-armed giant baby you shoot a bunch of times until it dies, and that allows the portal to be shut after a big explosion. But instead of simply being teleported back to the facility, you are instead stuck in this weird in-between place, and there's a man in a suit with a really creepy voice who says, "Dr. Freeman." It's not my best G-Man, as the man has come to
The
be known.
G-Man voice is kind of hard.
It is hard.
Yeah, it's very specific and weird.
There's the one guy on YouTube who's particularly good at it. But anyway, he's like, hey, so and throughout the game you kind of get glimpses of this guy watching you from time to time. He's like, hey, you're pretty good at what you do there. My employers are very interested in you, so I've been told to make you a job offer. If you
An offer you can't refuse.
Yes.
Because if you refuse, you die.
Yes. So if you choose to accept, you'll be placed in stasis until he needs you. Which, yeah, it's sort of in this weird spacey version of the rail car you entered the game with.
Yeah, it's a real great bookend to it.
Mm-hmm. If you choose to refuse, then you just get sent into a pit full of these really strong creatures.
It's open-ended. You probably survive.
Yeah.
Because there is a sequel. So
Yeah.
I think either ending is technically could be considered canon.
Yep. So you're placed. Dr. Freeman's placed into stasis, and years later, rise and shine, Dr. Freeman.
When did
It's
number 2 come out? 2007?
2004.
4?
according to
It's only
Google.
like 6 years later.
Yeah. Rise and shine, Dr. Freeman. So it's time for the second game, Dr. Freeman. Not those in-between-quels that we made with the same engine. No. Which are actually kind of fun in their own right, just very short. Anyway, so he's like, all right, I need you now. Time to wake up. I'm going to send you...
I'm going to put you on a train.
I'm going to put you on a train. Who would have thunk? And nobody questions why.
I
you
like
just...
trains.
Exactly. Nobody's questioning why you suddenly appeared on this train. But things are quite different from how you left them, because you're back on Earth. Everybody's wearing like these prisoner-style jumpsuits for some reason. And as you make your way, as you get off the train and go through this checkpoint, you discover that humanity has been sort of enslaved by this organization called the Combine. So there's all these human guards who work for the Combine, and they wear masks and suits and stuff, and there's a bunch of people who are none too pleased about their plight. There's no kids anywhere because the Combine has shut that part of humanity down. And there's this man who, let's see, I'm trying to remember his name. He's talking to people Big Brother style on the, trying to remember the name of this doctor who's talking to people Big Brother style. But anyway, Dr. Somebody Evil. You're walking around this place you discover is called City 17. Walking around, and you notice that the troops are, the Combine soldiers are kind of looking at you funny. And you're trying to keep out of their attention. So you run into this building, and there's this guard there who pulls you to the side. It's like, hey, you, come with me. And he pulls off his mask and he's like, hey, it's me, Barney, the guy you remember from the last game, even though all the guards looked the same. I'm part of this resistance. We don't like the Combine, and we're ecstatic that we found you. So you get into contact with Dr. Eli, I believe.
Dr. Vance?
Yeah, Eli Vance. And he's like, whoa, Dr. Freeman, it's weird. You haven't aged a day. Why don't you come on down to our secret base and we can fill you in on what's going on here. So, and at some point you also encounter Eli's daughter, Alex Vance. And so together you make your way fighting all these Combine guys until you escape to the safe house, where there's this scientist and his pet head crab. And they're like, hey, we managed to get this old teleporter thing working. So Dr. Wallace Breen is the evil guy.
Yep.
So, okay. So, yeah, they're like, okay, Dr. Freeman, you're good at smacking things and shooting things. How about you help us overthrow the Combine so we can free humanity from this oppression? Because it turned out that when he opened up the portal, the aliens that had infested the facility, Black Mesa, were in fact running away from another entity, which was the Combine. And so they've sort of placed this puppet dictator, Dr. Breen, to be in control of Earth. So,
and actually, they in this resistance, don't they have a couple of the aliens?
There are these 3-armed aliens called Vortigaunts, who are sort of these telepathic creatures that shoot green beams. And you go around, you go to Ravenholm, even though nobody goes there.
There's this old pastor guy who's like, hey, help me out, throw some saw blades around at some zombies and we can escape. And then he eventually, doesn't he like die trying to hold them off for you?
Pretty much, yeah.
That's good. That's a good little bit.
Yeah. You use pheromones to control giant ants, which is kind of half fun, half really, really annoying. Dr. Vance has been working on this nifty gadget called a gravity gun, which is a blast to mess around with. Because you can grab things and shoot them away very fast. And there's just an abundance of saw blades lying around. Who would have thunk? So anyway, you eventually make your way to the Citadel, where Dr. Breen's hiding out. He manages to capture Alex and her dad, Eli. But in the chaos of the fight, your gravity gun gets zapped by this weird alien force field thing, and it becomes super duper gravity gun, which enables you to pick up entire people and throw them around. So intense power trip. So you get to the top, fight Dr. Breen, break down his machine that's controlling humanity, but it all explodes, and it seems like you're not going to make it out of the blast. But then time is frozen, and the G-Man is like, well, that's what I wanted you to do, so here we are. Come back into stasis with me, and the game ends. Even though there's a bunch of like episode 2, because in Half-Life 2 episode 1, 2, because Valve can't count to 3 to save their lives. So there's some sequel like in between cool stuff going on, but I'm not going to get into that. Partially because I haven't played
Alex because none of us have access to a VR headset.
Yes, by all accounts, sounds like a good game.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like Nathan said, no VR. So fairly simple plot.
No VR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. So what are some Nathan and I have played it. Riley's working on the first one. So Nathan, what are some cool things you liked about the Half-Life games?
Well, the first one both games are pretty revolutionary for their like physics engine. They you could pick things up and drop them. They'd act like gravity without being programmed.
They'd bounce around on the ground, stuff like that. You could
cut people up by like throwing saw blades at them and then throw their body parts around. And it's like, whoa, it's reacting in realistic-ish ways, particularly for 2004. Which is like one of the coolest things it did. The whole source engine that it developed is the basis. I think
for the time, too, the facial animations were like some of the most advanced in games to that point.
And it was such a great physics engine that they used it as the base for Left 4 Dead, for the Portal games, for the Team Fortress games.
A mod of the first Half-Life game eventually became Counter-Strike.
Right, and then a mod of Counter-Strike eventually became Team Fortress. So it's also the game that put Valve on the map. And then they
went on to make Steam and decided
we're stopped making games altogether, even though they've made like a couple of the best ones ever.
Not long after Half-Life 2, they made Portal and then Portal 2, which we have also talked about.
Yes. The first one felt a lot like a proof of concept for the second one, I feel like. It's good for like 98, but it also... It
for the most part, it holds up when you try to play it. It's just a little janky.
It's more than a little janky, let's be honest.
There's a lot of jank, and it's also not very well paced, I would say.
Yeah, it's really
There are
long.
some levels that drag on for far too long.
It's
On
kind
a
of like
Rail
when you
comes
go
to
back
mind,
and if
the
you
helicopter comes to mind.
yeah. Well, even just like the whole intro sequence is incredibly long.
Although I do appreciate that it slows down and lets you just kind of observe this very well put together, well thought out environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of background details. The first one less, well, the second one more so than the first one. But even in the first one, you pay close attention and you see the G-Man running around, and there's conversations you overhear people having, sometimes about you, sometimes about what's going on. So you get a lot of like incidental lore.
Yeah.
And this is all the more in the second one, where you just kind of sit in like the rebel camp and they'll talk about all the Combine and all the lore and all the stuff. So it's like there's a lot of detail in that, and there's a lot of like radio transmissions where you just hear people
Pick up that
chatter.
can. Pick up that can.
And there's just a lot of detail poured into all the environments in the second one particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think the second one really tightened up that pacing.
Yeah.
I felt like there was no set piece that really lasted longer than it needed to.
Yep.
Like you get the opening sequence, and then you get on your hovercraft going over the water,
Which is equal parts fun and really frustrating at times.
and by the time you're just about fed up with that, they let you go. And it's like, okay, new thing.
Yep.
Do this next area. Oh, get on this dune buggy and drive around. Okay, now platform over some sand and avoid the antlions. Okay, now you control the antlions.
Ooh.
So like there's a lot of really great pacing in the way they give you weapons and the way they play with your expectations, and they'll make you like feel powerless for a level or a chunk of level, only to empower you in the next level and make you feel all the more awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think, as I kind of mentioned in passing before, Ravenholm might be one of my favorite parts of that game. Just because you show up and you just got the gravity gun, right? You've just been playing around with it with Dog, the giant robot, right? Playing fetch with him.
And this place has been just like completely infested and abandoned by humans because the head crabs, which basically turn people into zombies, have taken over. There's all kinds of it's sort of a spooky section,
right? But also you can. This is where all the saw blades are. So you just got the gravity gun. You can pick up a saw blade. In fact, as you're entering the area, there's some really great environmental clue giving, where like just leaned up against the wall is the body of a head crab zombie with a saw blade jabbed into the wall where its neck is, severing the head. And it's like, oh, that gives me a scathingly brilliant idea. I'm going to take this and just decapitate all the guys. And it's one part like survival horror, one part power trip. And I think Ravenholm in general just kind of encapsulates what's so great about it. Even the incidental secondary character of I forget what the pastor religious guy's name is, but he's just this really solid guy. It's like, oh, you want to get through? I'll help you out.
My flock is all dead, so I'm just fighting these guys. But yeah, and then Alex Vance, obviously, love interest, but genuinely good heroine. It's an implied love interest. Well, it's heavily implied apparently in the expanded stuff.
Oh, sure.
Which I mean makes sense, but
I didn't play. Well, it's the only girl character they introduced.
Right? Yeah.
So who else?
One thing, the thing that these games get and are actually sort of notorious for is atmosphere.
Oh yeah.
There's Half-Life 2 and Gmod, which as mods of Half-Life 2 are notorious for creating this feeling of being alone but being watched.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching a video just kind of going into the psychology of that. It is
something about the color palette and the way things move and
like, just the sound.
Oh yeah, the kind of like hollow, echoey,
the deafening silence. Yeah,
and that they also make that work in Portal too.
Yeah,
they make that work to their advantage. I also like how they kind of imply a shared universe
with Portal. Yeah,
they've got like these two major companies both working on Portal technology.
Yep.
Only one gets interdimensional aliens, and the other actually has fun puzzles.
Yep, and an evil computer. But yeah, the first game, like or other saying it's kind of janky. There's especially like a lot of the platforming sessions. Like,
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. It's just the pipe is shaped so weird, and it's so hard to walk straight across this dang thing. I've been falling and do this over and over.
Absolutely zoom everywhere.
Yeah, you're way too fast. But fortunately, the second game, the controls are a lot more dialed in, and it plays pretty close to how
Everything's
Portal
a lot
feels.
more dialed in. Well,
Yeah.
and it plays close to how Portal feels because Portal uses that exact engine in physics.
Yeah.
Portal
they did
plays
was-
a lot how Half-Life 2 plays.
Yeah.
That's the proper ordering of those statements.
All they
Yeah.
did was change what gun you're holding.
Mm-hmm. And add the whole Portal physics thing, which
Oh, yeah.
Better textures and all that jazz.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, the story, it's fairly simplistic as stories go, but it's the way it tells the story through the gameplay is pretty cool. In terms of first person games, I mean, at that point, of course, I was too young to remember much at that point, but there wasn't really a ton out there in story heavy environmental storytelling games per se, because obviously you have like Doom and some other shooters and stuff, but
Which those did have a certain amount of atmosphere. It just wasn't as dialed in or as much the point as it was in the first Half-Life.
the combination
nor
of
were they
shooting and
particularly
platforming is all, and
story-rich.
puzzles is what's that?
Nor were they particularly story rich.
No. There's just a lot of environmental storytelling, and the puzzles and platforming when they work properly are fun.
It works a lot better in the second one.
Yes,
Like that bit where
sure.
you're going through the desert, dodging the antlions, where you can pick up boxes and place them on the sand, so that when you step on the box that's stepping on the sand, you don't wake them up.
Mhm.
Even though, so the logic there doesn't quite fall through completely
No.
because you're still rustling the sand.
And
The
aren't
point
you
is-
like launched at one point with like this catapult thing? Or no, it's like they throw you with a crane. It's just like, wah! It's kind of a fun set piece. Obviously, the favorite set piece in the series is when you get the powerful gravity gun.
Oh yeah,
Oh man,
just because you can, and that's like after they
can
took
just
away all
grab
your other
entire-
weapons. Right?
yeah.
and so all you have is this.
Like you're about to fall into the Combine's hands, and then zapping the gravity gun makes it go Super Saiyan. So you just grab and yeet people around.
So
It's good fun. And then I don't know, Dr. What's his face is sort of a vaguely
Dr. Breen.
yeah, Dr. Breen. He's a villain. He's a puppet for the real bad guys, so I don't
Real
know.
bad guys we don't actually face because that
No.
probably would be what happens in the third game, but we
If
don't.
they ever make a third game.
And at this point, they kind of shouldn't because
They
let's
sort
be
of have.
real,
I mean, they made a Half-Life Alyx, which I think takes place like before Half-Life 2.
I don't know. I would
It's
need
tough
to
to
play it
say.
to know what happens.
I don't know a ton about it, but
Point
anyhow.
is, if Half-Life 3 ever comes out, it's not going to live up to expectations and reputation,
Mhm.
or at least odds are it won't. It very well could. That is a possibility. It's just not a likelihood at this stage.
Yeah.
And I feel like Valve only makes Half-Life games to show off their biggest, newest technological leap.
Yeah.
It's like, we made this physics engine. Let's make a game about the physics engine.
Yep.
Half-Life 1. We made an updated version of that physics engine. It's so much cooler now. Let's do a second one.
Mhm.
And only just now, after they made their Source 3, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Where it's all the VR stuff and all this high-quality models. Like, okay, Half-Life game, not 3, Alex.
Yep. Half-Life HD, this time in VR, which I suppose it was sort of like one of the first big budget VR titles. Yeah,
Well, it's
There
a
were
full
some-
game. There's some
yeah.
big budget like tech demos out there
pretty much.
with some big names attached to them.
Mhm.
But like
They had, of course, like Skyrim VR and
Sure.
stuff that already existed that they
Like,
ported
yeah,
to a
ports.
VR environment.
But the Half-Life Alyx was probably the first like purpose-made VR AAA experience.
I
So
think they just recently made like Resident Evil 4, but it's VR now,
mhm.
which is like, that's odd.
if it wasn't prohibitively expensive, I would try VR and probably play Half-Life Alyx. But at this time, until it becomes more affordable, I'm not really going to try.
Yeah, no.
Pretty processing heavy too, which is a lot of where the expense comes in. But anyway, the first 2 games are good fun. I've played through some of the like Half-Life, like Blue Shift, and the one you get to play as a security guard, I guess, who ends up being Barney from the second game. You play as a soldier, fighting your way through Black Mesa, trying to track down Gordon Freeman. And I think there was one more, but I'm not remembering it. But I don't know. They're kind of fun. But yeah, good stuff.
Good stuff.
Good.
Good.
What are your impressions so far, I guess, of Half-Life 1?
I don't really have much to add beyond what we've already said. Just kind of, I can tell that it was a big step up from other stuff in its time, but of course it kind of has those janky elements.
It's still from it very much of its time.
Mm-hmm.
Still very much.
It's interesting going from Half-Life to playing like the first Halo game, because you see a lot of similarities in terms of like pacing and different things, but obviously, you know, Halo is a few years newer. They were working with a little bit more, but it had sort of some of the similar problems where like missions in Halo felt like way too long, like because the maps were huge.
Mm-hmm.
It was easy to die a bunch. There was some of that going on in Halo, or not Halo, Half-Life rather.
There's kind of an unpolished first game syndrome that can happen with games.
But it laid the foundation for what a lot of like the whole first person genre.
Oh, yeah.
Because after this, you got Wolfenstein, you have all of the war shooters that came off of it.
Wolfenstein technically happened before even Doom.
Right, but I mean like.
But then there was like the newer ones, Wolfenstein
right.
New Order and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a reboot like Doom 2016 is.
Right. Yeah. It paved the way for a lot of first person games.
I feel like Half-Life goes more into System Shock and then into BioShock.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, in BioShock, they straight up reference Half-Life when you pick up a wrench and then Atlas tells you, why don't you pick up a crowbar or something. So, yeah. Story-based shooters, not... I'd call it like an adventure shooter. Not really like a shooter where you're just going around killing.
See, I would not.
Yeah,
I would not go there. Adventure kind of tells you that it's non-linear.
And the focus of adventure is more on exploration.
Oh,
and
sure.
Finding the keys to the next door, so you have more worlds to explore.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
That's how Zelda is. That's how Metroid is.
Definitely more linear than that.
King's Quest is. It's exploration. Where this one has some open feeling and some what feels like exploration, but it's a funnel.
Yeah.
You're being funneled in a direction, and it feels natural and it flows nicely. But
you can get lost.
Yes,
happens a lot, especially in the first game, where it's like something's wrong. I didn't do something in the right order.
That isn't the point of the game.
True, that's just flaws.
For example, if this were an adventure game, I would pick up the gravity gun and say, "Oh wow, look at this physics-based item that I can use for all this puzzle solving and exploration." I didn't say that. I said I'm going to use a saw blade and cut the head off a sucker and use that head to kill another guy because it's a shooter, and that's the way the game is geared.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mindset you're in when you're playing it, because that's what it is.
Get to point A and point B and kill everything that's in your way.
Yeah.
Is basically what it boils down to.
Yes.
I guess with all that said, we can get into some transcendental analysis.
I suppose.
Truth. What are some truths in Half-Life? I guess there's sort of a commentary.
Don't mess with stuff you don't understand.
Yeah. It's sort of a rebuke of sort of a scientism in some ways.
Science!
Progress for its own sake. Kind of similar to Portal in that way, I suppose.
Yeah. Because they're just like, you know what? Let's open up a portal. The first game is basically the law of unintended consequences. The game, actually, isn't unforeseen consequences, I think, isn't one of the names of the chapters, I want to say.
Sure.
Half-Life stands are probably screaming the actual name if there are anyone listening, and we know you are.
We know one of two of you is.
Well,
Yeah.
we've been screamed at by stands of other things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Probably.
I know there's details we've gone wrong about most things we've ever talked about. So.
Yeah.
Because we're horribly prepared.
We
Oh,
do
yeah. We're
none of all of the
professional.
research. Anyway, that being said, yeah, it's sort of a rebuke of scientism and like progress for its own sake, because you unleash all kinds of terror on not just the facility but also
On the world at
on
large.
the world. Because in the second game, the entire world has been enslaved by this foreign alien entity.
And you have also been enslaved by some entity of some kind we don't know the true nature of. Because,
And still don't.
And still don't, just because they like to keep G-Man as
Mysterious
creepy and
as
mysterious.
possible. Which I respect that creative choice.
Yeah.
The
second one is a lot more straightforward. It's fighting
almost
against
a triumph of the human spirit kind of a deal, because in the midst of all
rebellion
this chaos
against
and suffering,
insurmountable odds.
mm-hmm.
Just you, a crowbar, and a gravity gun against the world.
Yep. And a lot of I suppose now we're kind of breaking more into goodness. There's not really a ton of truth to
See, again,
Farmers
it's
are
not
bad.
like the thing
We
about-
don't like the combine.
We don't want any aliens crossing over here illegally.
Now, Skeeter, you don't mean no trouble.
No, I think well, I'll probably get to this more when it's beauty, but it's not so much the story that's being told, but how it's being told. Then it's kind
The
of
real story was the friends we made along the way.
Can we go one episode without doing that bit?
the real podcast was the friends we made along the way.
Anyway, what were you saying, Nathan?
Let's move on to good.
Yeah. Let's see.
Because I think what I had to say about it is more in the beauty category anyway.
Oh, sure. So yeah, really pretty character short in the first game, but the second game,
You've got Alex, you've got her dad, you've got Dog the robot.
you have Mr. Scientist Man. I don't remember his name.
But isn't he the same guy from the first one who's like, hey,
Yeah.
Gordon, let's do this.
What have you done with Lamar? His pet debeaked head crab.
You
really-
must put the CD in your computer.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people, and of course nameless, faceless, well, okay, like copy and pasted NPC
Albert
rebels.
Einstein's.
Yeah. Copy paste rebels are willing to sacrifice their lives to help you accomplish your goal.
And even the aliens from the last game who
The
have put
Vortigaunts,
aside
yeah.
the Vortigaunts who are kind of, you have put aside your differences to help overcome the Combine and kind of help them return to their homeland eventually, hopefully.
Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. That's all I can think of with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, it's very light, very subtle, very backgroundy
mhm.
kind of stuff.
Beauty.
This is, I mean, it's a game from 2004 and 1998 respectively, so it's gonna look like from that time, but for
Yeah.
that time, it's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, highest quality physics engine, some of the best like character rigging, and they had mouth movements when they
Mhm.
talked. I mean,
Not just opening and closing their mouths, but like just like making facial expressions and stuff as well.
and it's more than just the graphics themselves. I think the attention to detail and the level design and the way the environment kind of tells a story
Yeah.
or adds to the depth of the story is where this game really shines.
Music is generally all right, just
It's
kind
very
of weird.
subtle and incidental and kind of unsettlingly weird.
Yeah.
It's great at setting the atmosphere, and I think that's how you want to describe this game. It has atmosphere.
Yeah, and I guess in the way the game is built, obviously for the graphics of the time, but like, they built for the first game, they built an entire engine to make this game, which there wasn't really a ton in the 3D world in 1998 beyond what Nintendo was doing.
Well, here the thing about it is there weren't many like game engines that a lot of people used.
Yep.
A lot of it was all proprietary, in-house, used for one or two projects, right?
Yep.
It wasn't until you get to like Quake or no Unreal.
Yep.
The Unreal engine games.
Source.
You had
Source engine.
Spyro back at that time, and you had, Sony had some projects that they were
Mario
working on.
64 and a bunch of different things.
And so a lot of like individual companies maybe reappropriated their own tech for a couple different projects.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mario 64 and Zelda might share a lot of common programming.
That wouldn't surprise me.
But the Source engine was one of the first that was used by a large number of people, aside from modders.
Yeah,
that was a lot of that kind of thing.
Which, I mean, in terms like for modders, like this game has been modded,
to death and back.
Yeah. Honestly, like one of my favorite. It's certainly a cult classic, and one of my favorite deals is like the multiplayer mod and like videos of people playing through that and role playing different characters in the game. There's some good stuff to be had.
Honestly, I don't think I would call this a cult classic. I think it would just be called a classic.
Yeah.
It's not like Psychonauts for Xbox, where it's like released to no fanfare but has since grown a following. It's like, oh yeah, this actually slaps.
Yeah, both Half-Life games were acclaimed when they came out, I suppose.
And exactly, and they're classics definitely, but they still have players to this.
There's something to be said too for the world building, through the atmosphere and the stuff you can pick up as you go around, but. Like the fact that these games are connected to the Portal games and there's all this lore if you really want to go into it.
It's like, and the interesting thing is in a 3D game this early in the market, right? To have all this detail packed in there and have all this intentionally put stuff, it's like, oh yeah, that took work. Mm-hmm. You had to model that gnome, and we can carry this gnome until the end of the game.
Yep.
And somebody had to make that and put it there just as a set dressing.
There's this part early in Half-Life 2 where you're working your way through City 17, and to emphasize that there are no kids, because the Combine has shut down that ability somehow, vaguely, there's just this empty playground, which pretty much everybody just immediately goes and starts like going down the slide and playing with stuff in there.
Because you can,
yeah.
I think that's another thing. The levels like allow you to play in them. It's a sandbox.
Yeah. They
give you a gravity gun. They give you like just the moving around and jumping feels good, right? It's the sort of game where it's like just existing in the space is kind of fun.
Yeah. And
messing with objects is kind of fun. So just give us obstacles to overcome, and it's just kind of like,
and we're speaking mostly of the second game.
Yeah, the first game tried to do that and was successful for what it was.
Yeah,
at the time.
It's just much more stressful to play than the second game is, because it's like, I don't want to fall off this pipe
because I don't want to have to do all the 10 minutes of pipe walking I had to get here.
It's like, and then you get to the end of a sequence and it's not working. It's like, crap, I didn't do that thing back there I was supposed to. Now I have to backtrack and it's gonna suck. But limitations of the time. It is what it is.
It's sometimes interesting to go back and play a game that is very limited by its time.
It's cool to see how far games have come since this point, too. It's sort of the early era of modern games, as it were.
I suppose. Although, honestly, at this point, you could probably call Half-Life retro.
Kinda. Although I think most people refer to like 80s like stuff as or 80s and 90s as retro. Well, I suppose it's late retro period.
We're in
game.
the 2021 year.
Shh. I don't want to think
We're
about
very nearly in the 2022 year.
Half-Life was almost 24 years ago. I think that qualifies to be called retro.
Fine. Just like my profile according to that orthodontist. Still don't completely understand that statement. But anyway, I got my teeth fixed. But we're not talking about that. Unity, what brings everything in Half-Life together?
I think that would be the Source engine.
Yeah, honestly.
The Source.
It's the source and summit of the game.
Of the Half-Life.
Of the Half-Life. There's the title.
The source and summit.
Source and summit.
Yeah.
No, it's about like exercising that technology. And what can we do with that? What kind of story can we tell?
Exorcise that technology.
But it's like,
Ironic. You wrote games about the excessive pursuit of technology, and yet that's why your game exists.
Yes.
A little bit.
Curious.
and you hear good old Gabe and talk about things now. It's like, dude, do you realize you're kind of becoming Aperture Science? Stop.
Yep.
They were doing weird stuff, like almost metaverse level stuff.
Yes.
Wait.
I'm sure what everyone took away from Ready Player One is like, this is the ideal society we want.
Yeah.
But I don't know. My favorite part of that, while we're on this tangent, is the fact that there was a bottle of Sweet Baby Ray's on the shelf behind Zuckerberg when he
Yes.
gave that message.
I too, normal humans, have a bottle of barbecue sauce where
On my
books
bookshelf.
go. Just like every other human.
I am smoking these meats right now as we give this announcement. Anyway, I suppose we better wrap this up here. So,
I suppose
any other comments for? No.
for the good of the order.
No.
No.
I have a motion to entertain a motion to end the podcast.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Pal Papists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. And we will talk to you guys again in the next episode. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.